What is up, Dallas Cowboys fans? It's IndyCarTim. It is the 7 a.m. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning to you. Right here on the Daily Blitz. And look, honestly, I'm still trying to get caught up with some things that occurred while I was out a little bit last week. So I may be doubling up on some content on these things and rapid firing some things. And the topic today might be something you've already heard, but I got to get my take on it. And I got to get our take on it, right? All of us. Because today we're talking about something that I know has already been discussed because this hire was made last week in the midst of my illness that I'm still recovering from. But thank you for the well wishes. I've gotten a lot of messages from you guys. I appreciate all the well wishes. Obviously, we're trying to move on here with it and not deal with anything like that ever again. But look, the Cowboys just made a defensive hire that tells you, I think, and a lot of people think, just exactly what direction this thing is going next season. As soon as Christian Parker was hired as the DC, we knew this was going to be not even a possibility, but maybe even like a probability. By the way, if you're watching live, hit that like button, subscribe, drop your biggest question in the chat. We'll take a look at that for you here in a little bit. What do you want this new Cowboys defense to look like next year? I think we have a hint here. As the Cowboys have just hired former Georgia outside linebackers coach Chidera Uzo-Diribe. They've also brought in Marcus Dixon as the defensive line coach. Of course, all of this now under Christian Parker, who was hired just a couple of weeks ago as the new Cowboys DC. And look, as we talked about when they started putting the staff together, the Cowboys are let me rephrase that. Jerry Jones is letting Christian Parker put together his staff without seemingly any influence from the front office, which is how it's supposed to be, correct? Isn't that how it's always supposed to be? But for some reason, the Cowboys have not held on to that subscription the past, I don't know, however long, ever. And I said at the time, this is all positive. This is all positive because Christian Parker is going to bring his guys in. He's going to be able to run his thing, his defense, his scheme. And he is hiring the people that best fit and what the people that he thinks can best execute his vision for the defense. He's not inheriting guys that he's got to learn how to work with, who he may have to adjust their coaching styles or their scheme visions into what he's doing. He's bringing in his guys. And I think the people that he has hired, especially these two hires with Uzo-Diribe and Marcus Dixon, I think that speaks volumes about what's happening next year, because basically in today's NFL, outside linebackers coach is a blinking neon sign that says we are building this room differently. And in a lot of systems, that will point you straight to a 3-4 defense or 3-4 principles, or at least 3-4 looks, even if the base defense is still nickel most of the time. Now, listen, it doesn't mean we're about to see the 1970s Steelers defense, because that's the defense that they ran here. But it does mean that you're likely going to see more of a modern, best way to say it, like a modern multiple front where edge players are asked to do more than just pin their ears back. At Georgia, Uzo-Diribe's background was his ability to develop guys who can rush, who can set an edge, who can play with discipline, and yes, even occasionally drop back into coverage, depending on the call. That is having guys that are versatile, that are physical, who know their assignment, and who can execute that assignment on a regular basis. Seems like the opposite of what we had last year almost at every position on defense. But what does it mean for the Cowboys? So it means that the Cowboys are likely trending towards a defense where you see more odd man front looks. 3 big bodies across the front, especially on early downs or in certain matchups. You'll see edge defenders playing a wider menu, rush, contain, spill, simulate, because the run fits and the spacing behind it depend on all of these things in this kind of defense. And that brings us to why Marcus Dixon matters. And the reason I love this hire, it's a very under the radar. Both of these hires somewhat under the radar, unless you're paying attention. This is a teacher hire. Marcus Dixon. This is a teacher hire. DallasCowboys.com, if you ever foray over there, specifically framed this as a move that reunites him with Parker and places him in a role that he's known for, coaching the defensive line. So when you're installing a defense that has more multiple assignments and asks for more from your guys up front, the D-line coach becomes the cornerstone of that. You can't fake it. You can't just throw an athletic guy up there and hope for the best and kind of fake your way through it. The details decide whether you're giving up 5 yards a carry or forcing a 2nd and 8 all day long. So the obvious question is this a 3-4 defense now? And here's how I think we should think about this. Most defenses in 2026 are nickel by default. So base defense to me is kind of a tricky word. I think the real question should be, what will the Cowboys' core ideas now be up front? If the Cowboys are leaning more towards 3-4 principles, it's going to mean that the pass rushers are classified more like outside linebackers or edges than that traditional 4-3 defense is. Your interior can be more about controlling space, and they have the interior line for that and controlling gaps. Sometimes attacking, sometimes containing, depends on the call. You can show pressure without always bringing it, and you can threaten 5 and rush 4. You can rush 5 and play it like 4. You can create confusion without being in all blitz mode, and that is what Christian Parker does in the past. See if he can carry that through. We're all kind of crossing our fingers here, right? But Christian Parker's background is connected to that broader modern tree that blends the structures on the back end with the disguise and the pressures up front. And that's why his defensive principles are so, I don't even want to say desired by team, almost required by teams in this modern NFL. So if you want the simplest takeaway from all of this, the Cowboys are hiring coaches that fit more versatile, more modern, upfront players. Again, where edge rushers are featured differently. The defensive interior is featured differently. They have to play with more technique and more discipline. And here's where this turns into roster construction, and here's the part that you should be watching like a hawk as we approach April. The Cowboys are leaning into these looks. They're going to be requiring certain values of players, certain traits of players in the draft. Bigger guys, sturdier interior bodies that can hold their ground. Kind of think they already have those. Especially if you want any true 2-gap or gap and a half concepts that are sprinkled in with all of this. You're going to need edge players with length, edge players with movement skills, edge players that are versatile, guys who can rush but also play with their eyes. They can understand spacing. They can read an offense like an offense reads the defense. You're going to need linebackers who can cover and cover like a mofo. If you're going to go live in nickel shells and you're going to disguise coverages, that second level has got to be clean. And you got to have guys who can execute coverages there. So that means free agency. That means the draft. guys that we see the Cowboys potentially targeting will start telling the story here very, very fast. You'll see it in body types they target and the traits that they prioritize. So we'll end it all with this. I'm not saying Dallas is going to line up in an old school 3-4 every single snap. I'm not even saying that is going to be their full-time philosophy, but they could be trending towards those principles. When you hire an outside linebackers coach from Georgia and you pair that with a D-line coach known for teaching technique under a defensive coordinator who's building a modern structure, that tells me that the defense is evolving, and that's a good thing. The Cowboys are now telling you what they want to be without ever holding a press conference and saying it out loud. So there we go. I'm caught up on that. Let me know what you guys think. I know you've probably talked about this till you're blue in the face, but tell me what you guys think about these hires, what you think about this potential principal shift on defense. And based on this, what players you might like to target in the draft or in free agency. If I went too fast for you, I apologize. Try to keep these things in the morning super quick so that you guys can listen to it either on your workout, even if you're not watching live, your workout, your drive to work, your drive home in the afternoon, at lunch, your work, whatever it is. I try to make them quick so you guys don't have to dedicate a ton of time to these things. So I appreciate y'all bearing with us and tuning in here. We'll do it all again tomorrow on a Tuesday morning. By the way, I didn't even say it yet. Congratulations to the Seattle Sea Chickens and Dallas native, Rockwall native, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who got dinged up and wasn't really a factor much. Super Bowl champions for 2026. Who had that on their bingo card? I didn't. Sam Darnold certainly didn't. But here we are. You know what? Next year, why not the Cowboys? Why not? Let's do it, boys and girls. See you tomorrow. Until then, stay good.